The silent salute. Birds chirped softly through the branches of tall oak trees as the morning sun rose over the quiet suburb of Ashfield Heights. The light bathed the neighborhood in a warm golden hue, glinting off freshly watered lawns and sleepy driveways. It was one of those mornings where everything felt still too still. A perfect, unsuspecting silence that would soon be shattered by something no one could have predicted. Colonel Ava Jameson had returned home from deployment just 3 weeks earlier. She was a decorated military officer, having served multiple tours in volatile regions across the globe. Now 43, she bore both the mental fortitude and physical conditioning of a career soldier. Her posture was always upright, her gaze unflinching, and even in civilian attire, a plain black tracksuit and well-worn sneakers, there was something unmistakably commanding about her presence. Her return to American soil came with a promise to herself to embrace the ordinary. A simple morning jog had become her favorite ritual. The act of running through familiar streets, past mailboxes and swing sets, reminded her of everything she had fought to protect. On this particular morning, she followed her usual route, nodding politely at a few neighbors and enjoying the spring air. But just as she reached Maple Avenue, her focus narrowed. A man in a long gray coat was hunched at the front door of a 2-story brick home, looking around nervously. Something about him felt off. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't waiting. His hand was on the doorknob, fidgeting with it, then pushing something, perhaps a tool, into the lock. Ava slowed down and observed for a few seconds. Years of military training had honed her instincts, and those instincts now screamed one thing: break in. She immediately pulled out her phone to call the police, but was interrupted by a sharp, angry voice coming from a speaker near the door. "I see you on my ring cam. I've called the cops. You lowlife. Get off my property." Startled, the man turned to bolt. Ava reacted without hesitation. "Hey, stop," she shouted, her voice slicing through the morning calm with the unmistakable authority of a commanding officer. The man glanced at her, panic flashing across his face, then broke into a full sprint down the street. Ava didn't think. She just moved. Her legs, conditioned by decades of endurance, sprang into action. "Stop right there," she called again, her voice chasing him like a shadow. He zigzagged, ducking past hedges and around parked cars. Ava stayed locked on him, closing the gap yard by yard. Her breathing was measured, her focus absolute. Suddenly, he spun around and pulled something shiny from his coat. A pocket knife, small, but enough to injure. "Back off. I'll use it," he shouted, his voice trembling. Ava stopped just short, reading his body language. He wasn't a hardened criminal, was desperate, reckless, and dangerous. "Put it down," she commanded, her tone low and even. "The police are on their way. You're not getting out of this." For a moment, he hesitated. Then, in a flash of frustration, he charged forward, blade raised. Ava reacted with muscle memory. She sidestepped, blocked his arm with a fallen tree branch, and landed a swift kick to his side, sending him sprawling to the ground. The knife skidded away. He scrambled up and ran, leaving the weapon behind. Ava turned to retrieve the knife, panting slightly. She knew backup would be arriving any second now. That's when the sirens wailed in the distance. She stood upright, catching her breath, waiting to explain what had just happened. 2 squad cars arrived moments later, screeching to a halt near the corner of the alley. Officer Grant Maddox, a tall, broad-shouldered white man with a rigid face, stepped out first, flanked by his partner, Officer Dana Lee, a younger Asian-American woman with a cautious gaze. "Put the knife down and hands up," Maddox barked, already drawing his gun. Ava blinked, momentarily stunned. "Wait, him, not the suspect," she replied, setting the knife on the sidewalk and raising her hands. "I'm Colonel Ava Jameson, United States Army. I stopped a burglary." But Maddox wasn't listening. "A likely story," he scoffed, his grip tightening on the weapon. "Dressed like that? Out here with a weapon? Get on the ground." "Now." Lee hesitated, glancing between Ava and her partner. "Grant, maybe we should." "Stay back, Dana," he snapped. "She could have accomplices. I've seen this before." Ava's brow furrowed, her hands still raised. Officer, please. If you check my deeds in my pouch, you'll see I'm telling the truth. You think I'm going to let you dig around for something? Maddox growled. Lie down. Hands behind your head. She complied slowly, biting back her frustration as she knelt, placing her palms behind her neck. The cold concrete stung her knees. The situation had spun out of control, and her sense of humiliation grew by the second. I've served this country for 20 years, she said quietly. And this is how I get treated at home. Maddox strode over, still pointing his weapon at her. Cut the act. You're under arrest. He grabbed her arm. Reflex kicked in. Ava twisted, shaking him off. Don't touch me, she shouted, standing up quickly. Resisting, Maddox yelled, his voice rising as he pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed like thunder. Pain exploded in Ava's left thigh. She collapsed with a cry, her leg folding beneath her. Officer Lee screamed, rushing to her side. Grant, what did you do? She was resisting. Maddox shouted, breath heavy, eyes wild. From the end of the alley, a black SUV pulled up, sirens off. The door swung open. Police Chief Eric Santiago emerged, tall and commanding, his gray mustache bristling as he took in the scene. He saw Ava writhing on the ground, clutching her leg. Lee was kneeling beside her, trying to stop the bleeding. Maddox stood a few feet away, still holding his sidearm like a trophy. Santiago stormed forward. What the hell happened here? She was a suspect, ran from a break-in, Maddox replied quickly. She resisted. I had to shoot. Santiago turned to Ava, his eyes widening. Wait a minute, Ava Jameson. She met his gaze with a grimace. You know me? Of course I do, he said, voice thick with disbelief. You were honored at the State House last year. Medal of Valor recipient. Santiago turned on Maddox. You didn't verify her identity before opening fire? She was reaching for something. Maddox argued. She told you who she was. Lee shouted. You shot a decorated colonel, Santiago said, jaw clenched. You're suspended. Right now. He took Maddox's badge and gun. The officer handed them over silently, rage and confusion battling behind his eyes. An ambulance pulled in. Ava was lifted onto a stretcher, her face pale but composed. As they wheeled her away, she turned her head toward Maddox. I bled for this country, she said, voice hoarse. And today it bled me back. The hospital was packed. Chief Santiago stood in the waiting room alongside Lieutenant Colonel Bryce Anderson, Ava's former commanding officer. Bryce was livid. She deserves better than this, he snapped. We all do. We're investigating it already, Santiago replied. I promise you this won't be swept under the rug. Within hours, the story went viral. A black female officer shot by local police. Footage from doorbell cameras and officer body cams leaked online. The hashtags Justice for Ava and Color Before Credentials trended globally. Public outrage boiled over. Civil rights groups rallied. Thousands protested across major cities. Ava's military record was shown across every network. 2 Bronze Stars, multiple combat tours, and countless humanitarian efforts. Maddox was charged within 48 hours misuse of force, racially motivated assault, and obstruction. The FBI opened a separate civil rights probe. Ava, now recovering in the hospital, was offered apologies from politicians, the governor, and the Department of Defense. But she didn't want apologies. She wanted accountability. The courtroom was packed the day of the trial. Ava sat in a wheelchair beside her lawyer, dressed in her full dress uniform. Her medals shimmered under the fluorescent lights. Maddox sat across from her, pale and visibly shaking. Ava took the stand. Her voice did not tremble. I've survived war zones, but I never imagined I'd get shot down in my own neighborhood for chasing a thief, not being one. She recounted every detail. Calm, precise, devastating. Officer Lee corroborated everything. Surveillance footage sealed the case. Maddox's defensia, misunderstanding under pressure, crumbled. The jury deliberated less than a day. Guilty. 15 years in federal prison. Ava didn't cheer. She simply nodded. Justice wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. Months passed. Ava fully recovered. But her purpose had changed. She became an advocate lobbying for police reform, leading military diversity workshops, speaking on national panels. She started a nonprofit, the Silent Salute Foundation, helping veterans of color navigate discrimination in civilian life. Her story became more than a tragedy. It became a turning point. And every morning, as she resumed her jog through the same quiet streets, people now stood on their porches and saluted. Not because she was famous, but because they had finally learned to see her. Not just the uniform, not just the skin, but the honor, the service, and the human being behind it all.